let's do it live on a Tuesday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. What's going on, buddy?
I'm doing well. Nice to see the sun a little chillier than maybe you would think, given how nice it looks out there. But I got to tell you,
Really looks like you could hit the ball.
Look, you should be able to, but it's a little frosty out there. A little frosty still. But we're getting close. We're on our way. That's what I feel like. We're on our way to small ball season, which is very, very exciting. And I got to tell you, my mom listens to the first segment every time because she knows the first segment's when you and I just banter, and she enjoys our banter.
Yeah.
She is just flummoxed by merely Beau. She's like, he's not just merely Beau. Like, what the heck? she's not okay with
barely making it work.
Yeah, no, I know.
She knows. I'm barely making end beats over here.
She knows that.
I'm just lucky to be in the right spot. I'm just hopeful nobody gets rid of me. I mean, that's it. I'm hanging on by a thread here.
You're so good at your job. You got paparazzi wanting to just watch you, observe you work. That's how good you are. I don't have any of that. Nobody's walking by.
The details of that are quite insane over the last 12 hours.
I can only imagine.
At that, my friend. I would tell you that that there are a couple things that I got to get off my chest here right away. Number one, so this was, as many loyal listeners know, this was my first foray into The Bachelor since the Jesse Palmer season.
Yes.
So I was not.
Yes.
I had no idea what last night was supposed to be. It's something that's become a bit of a tradition for me and the wife. We will watch it, have a glass of wine, mock it. I'll make comments that I think are fantastic. And she thinks 65% of them are really great, and
that's
the other are a little inappropriate.
That's Hall of Fame.
Some probably
in what world is that not Hall of Fame? That's Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, field goal percentage, if you're not doing anything else in basketball, 65% probably won't do it. But, I mean, normally at that level you're good. So I think she likes about 65% of my comments, and then the others are, maybe inappropriate. But I got to tell you, last night's a bridge too far. It was a bridge too far. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I had it on the DVR because we put the kids to bed and we watch it after, and that way we can zip through. And I really couldn't take it. I will say it was a bridge too far.
I'll say this. It was, as far as a women tell-all, one of the worst I've ever seen. No drama, no excitement,
really
no real fireworks.
Nothing.
Just blah,
everybody loves everybody.
Don't care. Like, even the kind of mini fighting was so manufactured. And then, our boy doesn't have the zest when he comes on stage to really, like, the ones that are good are where you get an intense one where, for example, the final person, and this they've done they didn't do this last night because I guess there wasn't anything significant enough, but the final person who gets eliminated, and you have to remember, when they're traveling around the world together, I think it is completely different too. There's a different energy, right? Because they would have just gone, hometowns. They would have actually gone to their hometowns and actually spent time in their hometown with their family. Before that, they would have been around the world. And then knowing that, when you get into the fantasy suite days or to meet his family, and then you get fantasy suites, all of that stuff, you're going to be in somewhere incredible. So I think that there is something that comes out of that you miss in a season that's all at Nemacolin. Although Nemacolin, I think this has probably been the best advertising investment they have ever made in their entire lives because the places look spectacular. But
yeah, she's pretty sharp.
She's
pretty sharp over there. The daughter saved 84 lumber and apparently doing this too. So that's a good job out of her.
She's thriving. Thriving is what she's doing. But normally you get, the villain gets called out, and you got a little bit of that with Queen Victoria, but not enough, really. There wasn't much.
Not enough.
I felt
she was sobbing. She didn't lean into it.
No. Well, that's typically you don't get. Sometimes you'll get one like Corinne who will lean into it and then use that to try to catapult herself even further. But Victoria didn't do that, and I also felt like, it's heavy when they're talking about how they're getting like death threats and stuff. That's no good. Come on, society.
Yeah,
let's do better than that. But what you missed was the final elimination. In this case, the final elimination was a girl who said no to him. And he kind of handled it well.
Perfectly fine with it.
She was fine with it. She's like, are you regretting it? No, not at all. But normally that last person is devastated, and they will give – that'll be the first time that they have seen The Bachelor since they were let go. And they'll usually put those two on the couch together for a segment, and that's where you can get some real tears and fireworks and all this, how could you have said the things you said to me? How could we have done the things together that we've done together? And then you just sent me home. You know, like we weren't able to get any of that goodness. It was very sterile. It was a very sterile.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. And
that's what I thought as well. And I think go ahead.
I was going to top it off. My Monday night, the Miz loses the title. Just a terrible Monday night of television.
He lost the title already?
Yes, Bobby Lashley. It was I hated everything about it. He did a great job in his role. I will give him that. It's just not the role that I would have chosen for him in this particular moment. But yes.
Oh, man.
Yeah. If you look up Bobby Lashley, you'd say, oh, yeah, I could see why this guy would beat up most people. But still very sad. Very sad.
I'm going to Google this guy right now.
Bobby Lashley. Yeah. Bobby Lashley doesn't look like a real human. He looks
okay, let's see.
Different.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So that guy
this guy would – yeah.
He had his way with the Miz on.
So is this setting up like a Lashley Lesnar situation?
That's that's the big money match. That's what people want. It's gonna be Lashley Lesnar. I would think at Mania if Brock wants to wrestle, and if not, he'll probably fight McIntyre, which would be also a great match. But Lashley Lesnar is, I think that's what they're looking for. I think that's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There you go.
Yeah, but that's a
Gibby.
That's a big dude.
So that was the first thing that had to be discussed. Was that. The second thing that I need to discuss is as we start the program here today,
okay,
I hear no audio from you, no Zoom. And so I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if we're recording a BPA, because that takes precedent over a live radio show.
Yeah.
That would take precedent, some sort of a segment for the BPA. That would take precedent over anything that we're doing live on radio.
Yeah.
The Ibs boys, perhaps that would be it. Then I thought, you know what? I'm off the next couple of days. Would there be some way of filling those shows without Uncle Beau via content creation there?
Sure.
Would that be something that would be happening? Because it's odd that I don't have a Zoom, with Gibby 7 to 8 minutes before the start of the show. And we just got it now, and I'm seeing your lovely faces now, but I was unnerved. I've been unarmed by the fact that you weren't here, and where were you?
I believe I received a text.
Then I looked. I was
at 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
You there, Coach? Question mark.
You there, Coach? Where you at?
I said, yeah, was doing an interview.
Just curious.
Let's go.
So then I thought to myself, I was looking at the fantastic rundown that Gibby provided, and I saw that we're making the move to specialists today. Well, that's interesting, because we did defensive line yesterday. Normally the progression would go to linebackers or corners or safeties, but we're doing specialists today. And I'm thinking, okay, well, specialists, that takes some heavy lifting to get a full segment out of specialists. There's not a lot there to discuss. That's not a big free agency. That's not a big silly season conversation. I said, we're going to put the kid to work before he goes on vacation. That's what's going on here today, kids.
That's right.
Yeah. Do I have this all right? Have I overstepped at all? Because I think I've nailed all this.
I can tell you that we were done before 1 o'clock.
Gimme!
We were done at like 12:55. We might have been done around 12:50. And Chatty Cathy over here in the booth just kept going.
Oh.
He just rolled through the stop sign.
He has no regard for time.
No.
First of all,
he has no regard for time.
First of all, this is an interview that you will hear tomorrow with Coach Tarver, who coaches the linebackers. And let me just say,
he was great. I love Coach Tarver. He was
great. And it was great. And afterwards, I want to continue to get better at my job. I want to continue to be able to bring our audience the best insights that I am capable of bringing them. And sometimes that means that I have questions that I do not have answers to. And so I am very fortunate to have an opportunity to pick the brain of someone who is very much an expert.
But the best part of those questions is we can't talk about them on the air because it is after the interview. So
that's not the point.
You are bringing nothing to people. Is really what it amounts to.
That's wrong.
Are we on the
That's
street?
wrong.
You're bringing
wrong.
Oh,
erroneous.
Erroneous on all
scores.
counts. Let me tell you something. You'll get scores out of this, and you will get a more educated Nathan Zegura talking about the linebacker position and how it fits into this defense and what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't even know if that's possible. A more educated version of you.
Let time tell.
To the nth.
No.
You'll get your answer.
All right. Okay.
We have a show 1 o'clock.
All right. Very good.
I was ready.
Rolling right through the stop sign.
Ready.
I'm like, I might as well have been just flagging him down through the window like anytime
I had my eye on the
stuff.
time the entire time.
Is
it
Nathan
worked out
there?
well.
Is Nathan there? And then I hear Gibby go, he's coming. He's coming.
Right here
That's the
in
only
my
thing I
seat,
hear.
headsets in hand. I said, Coach,
Yeah.
thank you. Got to get on CBD at 1 o'clock now. He said, this was great. I said, no, the pleasure was all mine.
No,
There it was.
you were great.
You were great. And then here we are.
Let me just tell you this.
Get
Here
ready
we
to do
are
a
for
show.
The program. Fantastic. All right, let's get into the OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machine, preferred copy provider of your Cleveland Browns. For all the X's and O's for your office, call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. All right, the J.J. Watt stuff happened yesterday, but I thought this was very interesting. John Gambadoro?
He shot his shot. He
John
really
Gambadoro.
Did. He really shot his shot.
Arizona Sports Radio, 98.7 in Phoenix. Boy, did he. He said both the Browns and the Colts offered more money than the Cardinals to sign J.J. Watt. Now, as soon as I saw this, I said, that would not fit Andrew Berry's profile in any way, shape, or form. In any way, shape, or form. And while we as an organization have not come out and said, well, that's not true, because probably have bigger issues at hand, the Indianapolis Colts did and say, no, in fact, we didn't.
Yep.
We did not offer more. And, and Charles Robinson of Yahoo also said, no, unless these teams are absolutely lying to me, they did not offer more. And Charles Robinson is not someone that NFL teams lie to.
Right.
When he has something, he has it. He's properly sourced. And it would also back up my beliefs. So then you say to yourself, well, why would John Gambadoro tweet such a thing? Why?
Do you want my speculation, or are you going to answer your own question, which I would love to hear your speculation first?
No, I want you. I was asking you a legitimate question, not a rhetorical one. I think I have an answer, but I want to.
All right.
Yeah.
My first thing, John Gambadoro's putting himself on the map with something that will get retweeted all over the place. One.
Yep.
Two, it
Mission
could
accomplished.
be fed to him as you put this out there, you'll get something from us in the future by the Cardinals to say, nay, J.J. Watt actually wanted to be a Cardinal. This wasn't about money. He wants to be here.
We didn't overpay.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't overpay.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah. I think it's mostly the latter, and some of the former is like a nice little bonus alongside, a nice cherry on top of doing it as you get kind of moved around the internet a little bit. But then there's a short shelf life when you get fact checked, and that happened as well.
Although we live in a society where fact checking typically has no bearing on the fact that is being checked.
You're not wrong. In fact, did you hear this a couple of weeks ago? Colin Cowherd said that he found that his audience really doesn't hold him to any of what he says. They're more just interested in outrageous things that he says.
What he says next.
I'm paraphrasing, but
yeah,
what he says next. They're not gonna fact check him on what he says and hold him accountable to what he says. That's not where he's at. We've dealt with it for a while now, but that's kind of where we're at as a society.
It's the classic.
It's not a lie
line.
if you believe it.
It's the classic line.
And then all your people believe you too.
From the docudrama Private Parts, when they said they surveyed the people who loved Howard Stern, and they said, well, why do you tune in? Why did they listen first this long? And the question was, why are you tuned in for so long? I want to hear what he says next. And then you had all the people who hated Howard Stern, who ironically listened longer than those who liked Howard Stern. They said, well, why are you listening for this long? I want to hear what he says next. There it is.
There you go.
I mean, right.
That's it.
It's style over substance. And now I do think we for sure live in a society where the more outrageous the claim, the more it is well received. And there are no consequences for being wrong.
None.
Which is appalling. I want you to know, those of you who listen to this program and who watch it on the stream, thank you very much. We do that. We hold ourselves accountable. And that's why we will at times, when the few times that it does happen, where an error has been made, we will tell you, we were wrong about Josh Allen. Gibbe was wrong about Wednesday night taped.
I don't know if he ever admitted it.
We will
I don't think he ever admitted it.
We will come clean on our wrongs.
Yeah, didn't have that.
No.
I don't believe I had that.
Don't believe I had that.
Yeah, you'll get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. really fun day. Okay.
And like for you, you're like my four horsemen thing was foolproof. Went a little awry. Didn't have that. Didn't see it coming. It happens.
Who could have?
Who could?
Who
Not
could've?
me.
How could you have seen it?
Not me.
You've seen it? No, sir. No, not.
Nay.
Not. Did you see? Gibby wants to know if you saw. Well, I know you did because somebody who follows you on social, I follow, and they retweeted you retweeting Myles Garrett on a 64-inch box jump because I don't follow you on social.
Right. My mom's very sad though,
impressive.
by the way, that you don't follow me on social and that you went out of your way to say that you wouldn't hang out with me in real life. She was like, "Why? Does he not like you?"
Why would he not? You guys seem to get along so well. Why would you
That's
guys
what she
not
said.
break
She's like,
bread?
She goes, I really think you guys would enjoy each other's company outside of work. I'm like, "Mom, yeah.
Well, the transformative turkey. I mean,
Well,
that's
it's
gonna
on
be,
the docket. If we ever can cross
once
that
that
bridge,
happens,
the social interaction.
We'll get that done.
Yeah.
I also had somebody very mad at us for our conversation about Myles playing in the NBA, of which I think sometimes, folks, you need to just realize that it's March 1st and it's 2 hours of radio.
But I also
sometimes
think
it's okay.
We were pretty
it doesn't have to. We were pretty straightforward on how difficult it is, and the matchup of a 6'5", right? Very realistic and respectful of his absurd athleticism, but also realistic of his height and the deficiencies that it would cause in the National Basketball Association.
Right, and we were even had the example of Marc Gasol thrown in our face, but we said that's the kind of guy that he would have to cover. But then think about Marc Gasol at 7 foot, just turning around shooting a hook shot over 6'5" Miles. Like it's. Gibbe knows he was a giant Ostertag. If Gibbe's posted up, I don't care how athletic the guy is. If 6'8" Gibbe is posted up on a guy who's 6 foot tall, they're not stopping his Ostertag jump hook. It's just a known fact.
Chance.
Zero chance.
Zero chance.
Like, and that's
zero chance.
No disrespect to the guy.
None. In fact, when you box jump 64 inches, you have all the respect that is earned, because that's a pretty remarkable feat.
It is. Now he's come back and said
his size.
He has come back and said that it was really actually only 58 inches. He said, after careful review, this is actually only 58. I thought it was too easy. Now I got to do 64. Give me a week. So he's saying he's going to get that. He's going to get that done.
Man, that's crazy.
That's still, I mean, that's craziness.
That's crazy.
That's basically 5 feet.
Yeah.
And he wants to go above that.
Yeah, exactly right.
Outrageous.
All right, fun little program today. Coach is going to speak to the media today at 3:30. So you have that to listen to during the next level, which will be very exciting. I'm sure they will take that, and that will be exciting to hear from Coach Stefanski. First time we've heard from him in many months. And then AB tomorrow, which will happen. I think that's the plan anyway, that could happen as well, and that would be sometime in the 3 o'clock hour. So that's a good job out of the next level. The boys will enjoy that a great deal. What do we want to hear from Coach? We will get into that. Plus, Howard Balzer of SI.com and the publisher of the Arizona Cardinals site on SI.com on how J.J. Watt happened. Also go around some of the big picture things with him, because Chris Sims, Gibby's arch nemesis. You'll hear from him on the program today as well, off and running here on a Tuesday edition. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop here for my great friends at Weather Seal Home Services. Do you need a roof replacement? Would you like to replace your roof for the last time? That's the benefit of choosing a metal roof from Weather Seal. Metal roof technology, materials, styles, and colors, they've improved significantly. They're beautiful, indestructible, affordable. Plus, with a new metal roof, Weather Seal includes 6-inch gutter upgrade and up to 7 years, 0-interest financing. Do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. Call my guys at 877-351-SEAL or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com for more information. So Coach is going to address the media today at 3:30. This would probably be the equivalent of your combine presser.
Of course.
Is that how you think?
Yeah.
So you've had some time, reflect on the season that was. I'm sure there will. You and I, if we were doing it, we would attempt to praise him. He would be allergic to all praise.
No thanks.
Pass it on to others. That's the way that would go. And then it would be on to, all right, where are you on the off season in terms of filling these needs? What do you need to get offensively? What needs to get better? What are you working on? How's Odell coming along? What conversations have you had there? Those would be the type of things that would be discussed. What do you think is, from a thing you're most interested in perspective, what's at the top of that list?
I mean, kind of just what the offseason has been like thus far, how the Browns plan to attack, their needs, and really I would be asking them a lot about the defense. I feel like offensively you've got a lot of an understanding of what you're going to do there. I would ask, what were your takeaways now that you had a full season to self-scout, and, what evolution do you want to see on the offense, because he's the one who talks about, we need to evolve. But I think it's defense, and you're not going to get, what players are you interested in? I'm curious about their process. What is it that you're looking for with the assets that you've got in terms of money for free agency, your draft capital? How do you want to allocate those things? The truth is, though, this is where we need to be very close to the vest. And so the combine, when you think about the general combine interviews and the ones that we do, it'll end up being more fun, and we would talk to him, I'm sure, about quarter zips and what the 2021 quarter zip is going to look like. And, boy, we would love to see that on our desk by Monday. But
it would be there.
And it would, of course. But, it's probably your best bet to get – this is a first chance you're really going to be able to get, I think, some honest reflection from him on what transpired, what worked, what he's learned. I would, ask him a lot about, his experience as a coach, the experience of people on his staff like Callie, who's had an unbelievable, season and all the different roles that she ended up ultimately filling in on. What he's heard from the league, if anything, about what the offseason's going to look like in terms of getting guys back in the building, those kinds of things.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. I'd be interested in his self-scout of the season now that it's done. What did he like? What didn't he like? But this would be something that I would have so much fun with, and we would, because you and I have a relationship with him, because we do his show and we see him a lot, and certainly you see him now back in the building more than I do. But, this was a guy that we saw a lot. You'd talk to him in the lunch line and all of those things. And I would – this is one of my favorite interviews we do. And with previous administrations and previous coaches, I enjoyed them because it is – you're right. Like, they have – he can't tell you anything. He can't.
Right.
In terms of the offseason plan, he can't tell you what they're into, what their plans are. You have to be so close to the vest. So this is an interview of pure tomfoolery. That's what it is.
Right.
It's reflection on the season. Yeah, you have fun with it, and you reflect on a season. You see if you can get some stuff out of him. I think like the idea of that time where he didn't coach the Pittsburgh game in the playoffs, and like looking back on the absurdity of that you would be a first-year NFL head coach. Have you wrapped your mind around the fact that you coached a team to a playoff game and you yourself did not coach it? And as you look back on that time, what goes through your mind? Like, it's insanity.
Yeah.
That is insanity. There's no precedent for that.
No, as we talked to Bill Callahan about it, absolutely no precedent for that. And he said he's been in the league a long time. He's never seen anything like that. He didn't get to coach in that game either. Just
it's crazy.
Craziness.
Yeah. And when you have that press conference after the one that you have after the season, it's too close to it. You're too close to it. You're still wounded by what happened in the playoff loss to Kansas City, and you just it's not one where you can give proper perspective this season. And in many of the questions that were asked of Coach during that press conference was one where he said, that'll be something that I'll think about a month from now. Well, it's been a couple of months now, and so maybe you can get some perspective on that. So, I think that's what you're going to look forward to today at 3:30.
Yeah, and he's going to be – this is where he is so good, and you're going to get that great feeling again. This is a calm guy who's got the 3 Ps, right? And now we're on to a new phase to implement the plan, right? We're going to do all the preparation. We've done that. I know that they are chomping at the bit for free agency to start so that they can get start enacting their plan. I think this is probably a tough time. You don't have games to prepare for. You do have free agency and really kind of the transformation of your roster to prepare for, and it is something that, you have to wait, and you don't have full control over it. So part of it is, there are so many, many paths to how this can play out. And I think part of it's you want to know, all right, I want to know what we're working with here. I want to know, at least from a veteran free agent standpoint, what we're working with here and how things are going to be looking for the Cleveland Browns headed into 2021. So I think this is somewhat of an anxious time. And I think that the combine, getting together with everybody, having the prospects to look at it provides some – it gets kind of, it gives you something to do. Whereas I think now you're going to get into that, let's keep going through this. Let's make sure that we've got it all where we need to get to. But let's get there. And we're, March 17th is, 2 weeks away from tomorrow is when this whole free agency period gets going. So that's what everybody's looking forward to.
St. Patty's Day is when free agency starts?
I believe that's right, 4 o'clock on 17th to Wednesday. Gibby?
Oh, yes.
Gibby strikes me. Gibby, do we have this right that basically, and I know we're up against it, we got to get to Howard, St. Patty's Day, Oktoberfest, Cinco de Mayo, these are your days, right? Don't you crush all of these? I feel like you crush all of these days.
I do.
Yeah.
At some point, I will tell you a Cinco de Mayo story.
Yes.
Compliments of my wife.
The unauthorized
It involves, my marriage number 1 happened on Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, God.
So every year on Cinco de Mayo, my wife always rolls over in the bed in the morning, and the first thing she says is, "Happy anniversary, honey."
Oh, God, she's cold-blooded.
That's what she does.
Man.
Jesus. That's why you married her.
That is why I.
All right. Howard Balls are up next of SI.com. We'll get some insight into the J.J. Watt decision and NFL free agency at large. It's coming up next. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland. All right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily on a Tuesday edition of the program. Beau Bishop, Nathan Zegura with you here for the ride. Time to head on the hotline for a visit with our good buddy Howard Balzer. Covers SI, it works for SI.com, publisher of the Arizona Cardinals site on SI.com, and he joins us to talk about J.J. Watt ending in Arizona. This one, from our vantage point, Howard, kind of came out of the blue. Nathan and I talked last week that I don't know that it was necessarily priority one for the Browns to land J.J. Watt at the right price. We feel like it would have been something that could have worked, but one of the teams that we did not hear as a potential landing spot was Arizona. How did it come about?
It's a great question. We're going to be meeting with JJ in about an hour or so, and maybe he'll give us some of the details. But Steve Keim, the Cardinals general manager, sometimes operates kind of in a stealth way, if you will. And if you call back, about a year ago, the same thing happened when all of a sudden out of nowhere came the revelation that the Cardinals had acquired DeAndre Hopkins in a trade from the Houston Texans. So I'm sure they were somewhat below the radar. But I think also when all the speculation gets out there, a lot of times the speculation is rooted in what those of us in the media think makes sense. Sure. Well, Pittsburgh makes sense because his brothers are there. And on Green Bay because he's from Wisconsin, and all these other things. And as JJ himself, he's the one who broke the story yesterday himself. And as he said last week with all the rumors, he said, hey, I'm your best source on this. And so I think the Cardinals were very quiet behind the scenes, talking to him and talking to his agent. Obviously had to do perhaps a certain amount of a selling job. But whatever they said, whatever they did, it worked. And they got him under this 2-year contract and hope that obviously he's going to be a big addition to that defense.
J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones, you think about that, two of the most productive pass rushers in the NFL together. And I know for J.J. Watt last year, he was double-teamed more than anybody. And you'd have to think that getting to have somebody like Chandler Jones opposite him was a big factor in choosing Arizona, not to mention the great weather.
Well, I want to make something clear because I've seen this a lot about him being opposite Chandler Jones. And it's really, guys, not the case because J.J. Watt is a down lineman in a 3-4 defense, which he's been in Houston, and that's what he will be here in Arizona. Chandler Jones is the outside linebacker in a 3-4, along with some other pretty good pass rushers that they have with Hassan Reddick. Of course, Jones was hurt for most of last season, but Hassan Reddick came on. We'll see if the Cardinals can re-sign him and some other guys that stepped in and did a pretty good job. So I think what Watt brings to this up front is a guy that big thing is can play the run and can get that pressure from a 3-4 defensive lineman, which you don't see an awful lot of in the league these days. Most 3-4 defensive linemen don't get a lot of pressure, but Watt has been able to do that, similar in some ways to Aaron Donald with the Rams. And so by having him in front of those outside linebackers, that can make the pass rush even more dangerous because which side will he line up on? Which side will the outside linebackers line up on? If you don't blitz, you don't have to bring both outside linebackers, but offenses won't know which guy is coming. And although Chandler Jones obviously will be coming after the passer quite a bit. So I think all those things is what he brings to this defense, along obviously with being able to be out there for a lot of snaps and leadership and all that he brings to the locker room, and a team that has a pretty good number of leaders already.
Howard, this is an interesting time and a really fun time for the Arizona Cardinals with the drafting of Kyler, obviously, and kind of the buzz around it. It seems like they have flipped. I always felt like it was a sleeping giant. That's such an incredibly enviable location to live in. It is obviously the climate's great, and you just felt like it would be a magnet for free agents and people would want to come there. But obviously ownership had some issues through the years. But it seems like all of that has gone away. And you think about the DeAndre Hopkins move, you think about the drafting of Kyler. It feels like maybe now that with Kyler there, if they can keep him upright, keep him healthy, that they could kind of benefit from being this kind of place that people really want to go play. We've seen guys at the end of their career, that's happened before, Emmitt Smith and those guys. But in terms of being in the prime for free agency, it seems like this could be a new era here.
No, yeah, I think that's what they're trying to build towards, and they did have a pretty good stretch when Bruce Arians was the head coach, and so, but then that fell off the cliff. And now they're trying to bring it back, but they've had success with the really good players they've had of keeping them, like Chandler Jones after they got him from New England they signed him to a new contract at some point. They just signed Buda Baker to a new contract last year. Made the trade for Hopkins, signed him to a new contract. Patrick Peterson is on his second contract. They're hoping to bring him back. So, a lot of these guys, like you said, they come here, they want to stay, they like to stay, and I think what they're kind of hoping a little bit is with adding J.J. Watt, it sends a message not only, as you point out, to other players in the league, but it also sends a message to those guys that are here. And they do have some salary cap issues in this very strange year that it's going to be because of a lower cap. But, does a Patrick Peterson, does a Hassan Reddick, does some of these guys say, okay, we don't know what the market is truly going to be out in the open market, and let's come up with a fair and reasonable deal to be able to stay because they like what this organization is trying to build. And so I think that's, kind of what the Cardinals are hoping for with that. Michael Bidwell, the owner, came out and said that a couple of weeks ago when he said, hey, we've got, like a lot of teams, we have cap issues. We got a lot of guys we want to bring back, and we're hoping that players will work with us. Doesn't mean you lowball them, but you give them what you think is fair and hope that they will take it and not test an open market that might not be very kind this year. And that's going to be the big unknown throughout the entire NFL.
Yeah, you're probably going to see a lot of people taking one-year deals and hoping to have a nice year and then hit free agency again next year when the cap goes back up. Do you think that is the reason why it is a name like J.J. Watt? We know Matt Stafford just comes into the division. We know the Niners, when they're healthy, regardless of who their quarterback is, when Kyle's calling the plays, that's a good offense. You got Russ up in Seattle, who, if he stays there, which is another kind of shocking part of this offseason, but it's a loaded quarterback division, a loaded offensive division, and, J.J. Watt is a bigger name to maybe entice a Hassan Reddick to stay. Keeping a Hassan Reddick doesn't maybe have that same cachet with your veterans or other potential free agents. Is that why you think that they're looking at it as more than just an investment in the player that they got, but also an investment in, their brand, saying, come here, we've got a chance to do some real special things?
No, I think that's definitely the case, and you're right. I mean, this is a very tough division, and I think what it also showed, especially in the last two games of the regular season, when all they needed to do was win one game and they at least would have been in the postseason. And they just got beat in the trenches in the two games to end the season against division rivals San Francisco and the Rams. And so I think they realized that they need to get better on the defensive line. They had, even with the 3-4, there were games last year, guys, where they only dressed 4 defensive linemen because of injuries. And Vance Joseph, the coordinator, he was coming up with all these crazy defenses. There were times when they had 6 linebackers on the field at the same time and no defensive linemen. So that doesn't help you against the run, though. And that's where San Francisco and the Rams gashed them in those last 2 games. So I think they felt in the trenches they had to upgrade the defensive line, and also the offense didn't operate very well against those very good physical defenses that the Rams and the 49ers have. And the Cardinals just couldn't get anything done offensively. And I think they know also they need to upgrade the offensive line, especially on the interior. So I think those are some of the things they're gonna try and get accomplished this year, because they know. I mean, heck, if you're going to make the playoffs, then you've got to be, at worst third in the division, and most likely second if you're going to be in the playoffs, because this division is so good. And so I think they realize that. And J.J. Watt, a lot of people have said, well, do they really need defensive line? Well, of course you do. That's the trenches.
Always.
That's where games are won and lost in this league. And he just provides so much there. And, guys, I've heard – I looked this up this morning. I heard some guys say, well, he's not what he once was. He's not an every down player. Are you kidding me? Last year, I know there was several seasons he had injuries. Last year he played 91% of the downs in Houston. 91%. Over 1,000 snaps. Yeah. And played all 16 games. So I don't think the Cardinals are paying that money to try for a part-time player.
Yeah, no. And no, he certainly is not that. And as we said, he was double-teamed more than anybody in the NFL last year and still had a very productive season against the run and against the pass as well. Let's just take a step back from the Cardinals and JJ for a second. The NFL at large, what do you make of, Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson? We know Stafford's already come to the Rams in that trade. A little bit of a different situation as Detroit's trying to rebuild. But, what do you think's going to end up happening there with the Texans, who seem to have just almost imploded their own organization? Watt and Hopkins now in Arizona. I'm sure that they are, Watson's desperate to get down there with him, even though that won't happen because of Kyler Murray. But what do you make kind of the quarterback movement, and what do you expect to happen?
It's a great question. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine that the Seahawks would move on from Russell Wilson. And, of course, one of the big factors is they take a $39 million cap hit if they traded him before June 1st. And so I just have to believe that they're going to get that worked out. Houston, of course, is a whole lot different. And everything we see and everything we hear is that there's no way that Deshaun Watson is going to play for the Texans. And you would think at some point they're going to have to go out and get the best deal they can. And it's interesting, you just mentioned Kyler Murray. I put this on the Cardinals site yesterday, and I know it's a flight of fancy. And I said, hey, call me crazy, but people will call me a lot worse. I said, I urge the Cardinals at least to inquire and see what it would take to get Deshaun Watson. Because as much as Kyler Murray is one of the most exciting players to watch in the NFL, you're improving your team even more with Deshaun Watson, and you have him under contract through 2025 at a number that isn't too crazy because you weren't responsible for the signing bonus that Houston paid. And, of course, Kyler Murray would be part of the deal I'm proposing, and that's where he played all his football before he came into the NFL, high school and college in the state of Texas. So it might be crazy, but I just said to the Cardinals, hey, you got to try and see if you can make it happen. So I don't know that it will, but it certainly would. That would certainly turn the NFL on its ear. But he's going to go somewhere, I would think. I just don't see how the Texans can just sit on this and hope that somewhere down the line he changes his mind. And I really think, as dysfunctional as they have been, and they can't be thought of very highly in the Houston area, if they could get Kyler Murray in this, better than Tua or a draft choice, that would be something that could perhaps excite the fan base and say, well, okay, at least they got a guy that is going to be a whole lot of fun to watch as they try to rebuild the team around him. But, I don't know how much rebuilding is really necessary. I mean, obviously they only won 4 games last year, but Deshaun Watson had 33 touchdowns and passed for over 4,800 yards, and he didn't have DeAndre Hopkins. So obviously they've got some other players there. And so I think that would be kind of interesting. But we'll see how that all plays out. But like I said, I have to believe he's going somewhere.
We said that on our show yesterday, just throwing it out. I'm sure Watt and Hopkins are going to say, hey, Deshaun Watson, we know he's really good, and no disrespect to Kyler, as you said. But, how was that received? And do you think that's is that something that, they're even kicking around?
I don't know. I mean, I think every team kicks around everything to a degree. Yeah. And they always talk about it. Does that mean that they make the phone call? Does that mean, or at least they send a note and say, hey, when you guys are ready, give us a call. We want to see what it'll take to get him. How much more than Kyler Murray they have to send, and they'd have to deal with some salary cap things. But the interesting thing with all that money, Deshaun Watson has an average of a little over $29 million left, average per year in the 5 years. But his base salary this year is only a little over $10 million, so that's not a big cap hit. And so you could probably be creative and make some things happen, and the dead money for Kyler Murray wouldn't be that bad if he would move on. But I got what I expected in terms of response. People saying, "Oh, you're nuts! You've really gone off the deep end," and all these things. And other people said, "Wow, that would be pretty unbelievable." And I think some people see that, hey, why not at least look at it? So someone accused me of making up a story and all that. So no, I didn't say that they predict that they were going to get him. I just said I think the Cardinals should pursue it, and I don't know how anyone can argue with that. At that point.
Howard, this was excellent. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time today. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
All right, that's Howard Balzer, SI.com, and the publisher of the Arizona Cardinals. So, we said it. You said it yesterday. You brought it up. Look, I mean, there aren't that many teams that aren't going to inquire.
No.
You're going to call. I mean, it's a transformative franchise quarterback. Period. He had one of the best years in the history of the league this year. They won 4 games. Like, you would kick the tires on that, including Arizona.
Sure.
That's the best one I think they could get in order to sell to their fans, is that one.
Right. I think that feels like the most win-winny of any scenario that we've laid out there for the Texans and because the team that's getting Deshaun Watson is winning, period. But for the Texans, that feels like Right. You could sell this. You're getting a very young player. You're getting a very good player in Kyler Murray, who's been Rookie of the Year. This is
exciting,
local
fun.
Kid. Yes, as he pointed out, played Texas. I'm fascinated by that. I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to have some coverage of that. I'd like to hear that phone call. I'd like to hear that conversation and hear how that goes.
If you're Houston, that's the one that makes you pick up the phone fastest.
I think so.
It's a known
to me,
commodity.
It's
a Texas kid. He's box office.
Infinitely more appealing than Tua and the Miami package.
Oh my gosh! Or the Jets, or any of those.
Infinitely.
Any of those platters of first round picks. I can put Kyler Murray on a billboard tomorrow, and sell 10,000 tickets. Like there would be
Texas.
A genuine excitement for him in Texas, an incredible excitement. Even with the loss of Deshaun, you'd quickly be talking yourself into Kyler if you're in the state of Texas. That wouldn't happen. That wouldn't take long at all. That's an easy conversation.
Yeah, and if you're talking about doing the deal with Tua, the conversation is this guy was getting benched in important drives for Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Oh, it's a much more difficult proof. Kyler's proven he's electric.
Yes,
he's an electric player. I think that is a bit revealing though from Howard's perspective. Because I wondered if Murray was untouchable, like if he was an untouchable player in his first 2 years. I wondered if that was, if he was to the point of untouchable.
Right.
And you never know. There aren't that many guys in the league who are like Mahomes. There aren't many of those in the league that are just, look, we're not picking up the call. Bill Simmons used to do this in the NBA, and it was always like there was a trade value column that he would do. And it was always LeBron and Kobe and Shaquille and Tim Duncan, and those were the guys. You don't even pick up the Luka Doncic nowadays, Giannis. You don't even pick up the phone. And Pat Mahomes is we don't pick up the phone, but short of Patrick Mahomes, almost everybody else, you pick up the phone. If somebody calls, you're going to pick up the phone. So,
yeah,
that's a fascinating one. That's about as good for good as it could get right there. And look, they weren't mentioned in the other one. They weren't mentioned in the Watt deal, and they ended up with him.
Correct. And they were never – there was no – to his point, there was no buzz whatsoever about DeAndre Hopkins getting traded to the Cardinals. None. So they're a team that operates very much like we've operated the last few – certainly for a while now, where moves are made, you don't hear anything about them. Austin Hooper, Jack Conklin.
Nothing till they're signed.
Here they are. Welcome to town. Even the Odell trade. That one had a little speculation that was fueled by, but when it happened, boom, there it was.
Yes, I think when your general manager holds a cell phone up and says, "Dave's got my number," that certainly starts the speculation.
That's something. That's something there.
That's something to say the least. The next thing they got to do in that Arizona situation, just fix the uniforms. Just get the piping off those things. They've got a beautiful all-black one that's great. Wear the all-whites, like the old Pat Tillman era whites.
Yeah, where it had the flag,
and away you go.
Arizona flag on
the flag. Get that Arizona
nice.
flag on there. That's sharp.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy.
Got a lovely
it's
color
not hard.
palette
You
to
can
work
be close to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. It's been I think the Cardinal thing is something that's harder, right? But, is what it is. Work with it. Use the black, lean into the black and the yellow and the red, and away you go. It's not hard. They got to get rid they're the only team left with the strange piping because the Bengals are getting rid of theirs this year. So those are the only two teams left with the strange Reebok piping that we had years ago. And a reminder, all guests who appear on Cleveland Browns Daily do so via the Fifth Third Money Line, Fifth Third Bank, making Cleveland Browns Daily a Fifth Third better. Coming up at the top of the hour, we take a look at the off-season deep dive, continuing on the specialists, so we will get into that. Plus, Gibby's arch nemesis, Chris Sims. You will hear from him as well. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Injuries during childbirth require experienced counsel. Call the lawyers at Elk & Elk for a clear answer as to what happened during your child's birth. Elk & Elk is a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today. Our off-season deep dive continues with a look at our special teams situation. And this is a pretty straightforward one. Obviously, the kicking situation is something. Cody was clutch, certainly, in those crazy weather games. But there has been inconsistencies historically for him, but he is a free agent. The hammer will be back. He is in-house, and then it is kick and punt return and what the options are there. Donovan Peoples-Jones did an admirable job in that role as the season went along last year, Z.
Yeah, and I think, you're looking, the big question mark here is Cody Parkey. And Cody on the year, 19 of 22 on field goals, 43 of 47 on extra points. But as you pointed out, and I think rather astutely, in the 2 playoff games, he went 3 of 3 on field goals, 8 of 8 on extra points. I mean, you go 11 for 11 in the playoffs. I think that says, yeah, we would love to see you back here. Now, the Browns do also have Matt McCrane, who was on their practice squad all season. He is still here as well. So with Cody, that's one that I think you would like to see that continuity. I thought he did a good job. I thought it was very nice to have that kind of, where you're not worried about what's going to happen when you go to take a kick. It was a little rough down the stretch in the sense that weeks 14, 15, 16, he missed an extra point. And in week 14, he also missed a field goal against Baltimore. So you think about this guy missed on the season 7 kicks. 4 of them happened in that 3-week period. But then he rights the ship. Week 17, he got to have it. He goes 4 for 4 combined. The playoffs, he goes 11 for 11 combined. So he made his last 15 kicks in what you would call the 3 biggest pressure situation games of the season, week 17 and the 2 playoff games. So that makes you feel better, I think. I thought he was good all year, to be honest with you. I really liked what we got out of Cody Parkey. One of his misses on an extra point was in Cincinnati. That was a surprise. One of his field goal misses, 2 of them were in bad weather games against the Raiders and Philly here. So you take those 2 bad weather misses out, he missed 1 field goal all season long, and he missed 4 extra points. But as I said, perfect in the playoffs. Hewlett's played his –
Hey, real quick on him, too.
Yep.
Like, when just the difference – of having him than not having to worry about kicks, was an incredible warm blanket. Just like, oh, okay, these are automatic now. This is nice.
It was a huge warm blanket.
Good feeling.
It was just so nice. He went out there and you're like, this guy's gonna go make those kicks. That's what's gonna happen here. And so I thought that was one of the best parts about having him, is that you just felt good about it when it was his time, when his number was called. You felt like the ball was going to go through the uprights. Hewlett has been a very solid, reliable long snapper the 7 years with the Browns. And then you got the hammer in his second year. I think he battled along with the weather, a little bit of inconsistency this year. I think he'd be the first to tell you that. Mm-hmm. And this hopefully will be a big 3rd season for him. But a guy that, certainly you have here an incredible natural talent. The biggest question is going to be, I think, A, does Parkey come back? B, in your return game, it was supposed to be JoJo Nats, and he misses the whole year with a torn ACL. Does that mean that's it for him? I don't know. Ryan Switzer's been a good returner at points in his career. He is still on our roster. Donovan Peoples-Jones was our primary punt returner once he was activated. I thought down the stretch, Dearness Johnson gave you something real nice as a kick returner, 25.1 per return over the second half of the season. So you've got guys in-house that did it for you last year. It's not like you definitely need new returners, but that's something you'll bring competition in. The flip side of it when you talk special teams is a lot of the guys that you would consider our core special teams players, Kaderil Hodge, for example, at wide receiver. On defense, Tay Davis, Elijah Lee, and then you think go even further, Tavier Thomas, are all either restricted or unrestricted free agents. Kaderil Hodge, Tay Davis, and Tavier, restricted, Elijah Lee, and unrestricted. But those are core special teams guys. And Kaderil Hodge, Tavier Thomas, probably considered your 2 best, with Thomas being your best. So those are guys that you're going to want to see come back, into the fold for Coach Prefer.
Yeah, there you go. And the one thing I think, just the special teams, when we come to the one word that describes Arub in 2020, I don't think that Coach would say, if you asked Coach Prefer, that the coverage was what it was the year before. that there were some lapses, especially in kick coverage this year, that we did not have the year before. Now, some of that was just your depth chart was ravaged because you were playing specialists in the first-team defense.
Yeah.
And that probably contributed to that a great deal because the trickle-down from those injuries in the secondary, they land at the feet of the special teams more oftentimes than not. Same at linebacker.
It does, and that's something that, of course, you hope gets cleaned up as you go along if you're the Browns, and I think that's something that will be very important to the Browns to clean up and to continue to strive for that improvement there. I think part of that, too, comes with, look, some new pieces, off-season. We know what that off-season was, how truncated that off-season was for the Browns, for everybody in the NFL. But you look at overall in terms of, special teams grades, the Browns were considered a very solid special teams unit. Pro Football Focus had them 14th overall. They got an 83.9 grade, so top half of the league in special teams, which is really, I think, that's what you're looking for. That's where you want to be, is in that top half of the league. That's you never want special teams. There are going to be a few teams, and your ultimate goal is for you to have a game-changing special teams unit. But when you're a good offensive team and you're a good defensive team, you just don't want to lose games because of special teams. And in the past, I think we ran into that at times where, I think going into this last season, in fact, I think one of our goals for special teams was just be neutral. Like, just be neutral. Don't kill us. And I think this year you really got that. And Vincent Taylor's a guy I'll get. Listen, a couple blocks this season. He's another free agent. He was a key guy for you on special teams. So how they fill that in going forward, I think, is something big to watch. Thomas, Hewlett, Taki were your top-graded specialists this season in terms of what they did on that special teams unit for you. So you want to continue, obviously, to get good production there, but that's something you're going to have to really, it's got to be a focus, and I know it is. They take all three phases very seriously. We've heard Kevin Stefanski say that. But you were right where you needed to be. And I think, as you pointed out, there is room for improvement, but you were right where you needed to be. Your baseline is very good.
Yep, very, very good. And we'll continue with the defense as the week goes on. Did you see this story on ESPN today, kind of the oral history of the Kobe Bryant workout when he was 17 years old? Have you heard this story before?
No.
Okay, so it's a great read. It's a tremendous read.
Okay.
And it's a oral history of that workout. And I've heard stories of this workout. I've heard Jerry West talk about this workout. And there's this legendary story of Jerry West sending his son, Ryan West, who's the same age as Kobe at the time, to go pick Kobe up at Shutters on the Beach, which is this Malibu hotel.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Of course, you fly in those circles. You would go in the same places that Kobe does. It makes sense. So that he goes and picks him up, and he works out in this Inglewood YMCA rec center thing. And Kobe basically puts on a workout that is, according to Jerry West, the greatest individual workout that he's ever seen. And then the Lakers, there was video of it, and the Lakers destroyed all evidence of this workout. And the only other team that, and I haven't read this, oral history, but not in its entirety, but in my mind's eye, the only other team that was really smitten with him was the Nets. That John Calipari was really interested, and he was the coach at the time, and he really wanted Kobe. And I've heard Calipari tell this story as well. But actually Bobby Marks and the management at the Nets kind of blew it. Like they put him on a plane in not in first class. They had a rule if you were 6'8" and above, you got first class tickets for workouts, and they put Kobe in like a middle row seat on the workout. And he was just, he's a 17-year-old kid. What's he care? Well, his agent ripped him a new one, and it basically became, if I'm remembering correctly, this kid's only going to play for the Lakers. And at that time, it was like, who the hell is this kid? The 17-year-old kid is going to tell NBA, because this wasn't LeBron. Like, this was Kevin Garnett was in his infancy. This was the year after Garnett. Garnett was the first one since Moses Malone to do it, and Kobe was a guard. He wasn't a big. Garnett was 7 feet tall. I mean, there was no precedent for a 6'6" guy going straight to the NBA. But this workout did it, and it really leads to incredible what ifs in sports. If this workout doesn't happen, if he doesn't get to Los Angeles, what happens? Of course, he was dealt from the Charlotte Hornets, who drafted him, to the Lakers for Vlade Divac.
Yeah.
Was in that deal, and Charlotte thought they were a contender with him and Glenn Rice, and and that's what they were going to go. And then later, Glenn Rice played with Kobe. It didn't go all that well. He did win a championship, but eventually they ended up on the same team. But kind of a fascinating what-if story of that one workout with Kobe.
I just somehow kind of like slid through it and got to the clip that Michael Cooper, who had been named the Defensive Player of the Year in 1987, had recently retired. He was, as I said, Defensive Player of the Year in 1987. They had brought him in to guard Kobe. And just this quote's great because I thought I was going to go out there and whoop his butt, to tell you the truth. That was my thought. I was like, okay, look, I don't give a beep how old I am. I'm not going to let some beeping guy do anything. And boy, was I brought back to reality quick. In a hurry, I found out that 40 and 17 don't go together on the court. At the very beginning, I got right in there and got my hands right up in his face. Guys hate that, especially younger guys. He just rose up over my hand like I wasn't even there. I was planning on not being that strong and they'd be intimidated. No, Kobe didn't have a frail body at that age. He was ready to go.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's amazing.
Michael Cooper was
Coop.
40 though. Yeah. 40.
Yeah. 40, the step is noticeable. It's really noticeable. I even notice it when I play the boys. And I'm like, oh, they're still no, I can't do that anymore. That's it. I can't not quite the same lift on the old jump shot as there was. Let alone going against Kobe Bryant.
Oh, man, I can't wait to read that. There's a lot from Cooper, and apparently this thing got very contentious as the workout went on.
Yep. Yeah. Well, he's just relentless. He was relentless in that way, in the way that he went about it. So, very interesting. I saw that Kyrie talked about him becoming the logo of the NBA. I think that's silly in that sense. With all due respect to the incredible career that he had and the legacy and all of that, I mean, there's certainly another side to that as well. And I don't know how you do better than Jerry West, or if you want to do better than Jerry West, it's Michael Jordan. But Jordan's logo's already synonymous with sneakers, so I don't know that would
doesn't need it. Jerry West is the logo. That's literally that's
he's the logo. Yeah, that's right. It's a pancake breakfast. We do it once a month.
That's right.
That's the way that's handled. All right, coming up next, Gibbe's arch nemesis, Chris Sims. You'll hear from him. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. right, welcome back into Cleveland Browns Daily on a Tuesday edition of the program. Yesterday we talked about Lavonte David's name coming up, and Z mentioned this. What did you do this on ClevelandBrowns.com? I know you've talked about Lavonte David be a nice fit. I remember you talking about that yesterday. Did you do like a free agent list, or what did you do?
I think it was just like a 2-minute drill that was an initial free agent preview of some potential guys that could be at each position that are out there. And, yeah, Lavonte was on the list. Now, I didn't think – and I still, I'd be surprised, A, if Tampa lets him go, and B, if that were to work out, especially with the numbers that we just saw being thrown around, $14 million a year.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot. But nonetheless, I think we all agree with Chris Sims. Now, he wouldn't give us a quote just for us. He wouldn't do that.
No, of course not.
Because Gibbe asked for it, so he said, no, you get my quote that was for everybody, Gibbe. And so
that's right.
That's what happened. That's what we're going to hear.
He will put up with Gibbe. Sims will put up with Gibbe once a year.
Yes.
Once a year, he'll put up with him. Gibbe will stalk and pursue doggedly over the course of the year, and Chris will acquiesce once. And that's it. And don't come asking again, because I'll ignore. But once I'll do it. And so this is what you get. So here is Chris Sims from his NBC Sports podcast, Chris Sims Unbuttoned, with his take on why Lavonte David and the Browns could be a match.
There's some reports out.
You guys are down. It's about 3 minutes, 45 seconds.
Cleveland Browns for Lavonte David. So here's the narrative that we're seeing out there. The Browns and Lavonte David, a match made in heaven. Are you going to trust that narrative out there, that this is a deal that not only should happen but will happen? Or are you going to bust that narrative?
I'm going to trust that one. I am. Makes too much sense. To me, it's the most glaring positional need on the Cleveland Browns football team. They run the Seattle scheme type defense. Their defensive coordinator is Joe Woods. He was in Tampa with me when I played there. One thing I could tell you about all those Seattle scheme guys and all of that, right? And it's really, that came from the Tampa 2 defense. They believe in the Derek Brooks of the middle linebackers of the world, those type of guys. They don't have that in Cleveland right now. They have below average linebacker play. And for that defense to work, a la KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, the 49ers with Fred Warner, you saw the Chargers last year draft the kid out of Oklahoma because they need that guy.
Murray. Right?
Yeah, Murray, exactly right, Kenneth Murray. The Jaguars with Miles Jack, right? That defense doesn't work unless you got a guy that can fly around the field and be fast there. They put a lot on that position. That strong safety linebacker position in that Seattle scheme is huge because, they asked them to do a lot in coverage and passing off people and doing that things. And it's one of the few, just like Tampa 2 had the middle linebacker can be way down the field. The linebacker in that Seattle scheme, certain formations, a wide receiver could run a 25-yard crossing route from the slot, and he's kind of responsible for him to carry him up the field and cover him. So you have to have a special guy that way, let alone when you play a zone defense, right? Because that's what it is. It's a match zone. Yeah. It's zone. Oh, wait, somebody's here. Let me cover him. You need guys that are really fast and can react and run. They have a ton of money. They're there. And, I think that's one that I'm trusting all the way.
Pete is noting here in our rundown that B.J. Goodson and Malcolm Smith were the players with the most snaps of any Cleveland linebackers last season.
No,
you're shaking your head.
Well, they're just nothing special. B.J. Goodson's a thumper.
Yeah,
he's not even really the guy that fits there. He's more of like, if I want B.J. Goodson, I want him to it's 3rd and 2, and I want him to fill the A gap and but not for that. And then Malcolm Smith, of course, he came from Seattle and has that athleticism, but at this point of his career, he's not what he once was or the Super Bowl MVP or anything like that. So, that is a huge
1 minute
need for that football team. They got the money, and I would think they make that move.
Well, and think, too. I mean, they were 11-5 last year. Their offense took a step forward.
Yep.
Kevin Stefanski figuring some stuff out for Baker Mayfield. Yep. He had a really good year. The running game is awesome. We know that. One of the best offensive lines in football. So you have a running game like that. You have a quarterback that's coming into his own, can work the play-action game. So you can control the game on the offensive side. You match that with a defense, with a Lavonte David that can elevate the defense. You're talking about
30 seconds.
Legit
the favorite in the AFC North.
Legit. And just think about their last game. You saw them on the field. You saw them in Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
You never got the sense they were going to be able to stop. If Patrick Mahomes doesn't get hurt, you never got the sense they're going to be able to stop him all day. And if you really think about it, it wasn't deep passes. They were picking them apart with the linebacker.
10 seconds, standby.
All of that. So that's where I'm going to trust that narrative all the way there.
Okay, trusting the narrative of Lavonte David to the Browns being a match made.
You guys.
Look, you like the match of it. It just is going to come down to the dollars and cents of it all. That's what it is. You love everything he would bring. The leadership, the ability. I mean, you know what he is. He is a beloved Tampa Bay Buccaneer, though. I remember talking to John Ledyard about this, and there was, is it Jenna Lane who's down there too? We had Jenna on before.
Yep, of course.
Yeah, yep. And both of them talk about, how he is viewed in that organization, almost in a Derek Brooks type way. In terms of that level, I'm sure that's only it has been amplified since winning a Super Bowl. So I don't think that, to me, it seems hard to imagine him not being there. And then it seems hard if he's not there that we would pay a premium for it. And I think it'll take a premium.
I think it will, too. It would be great. I think the Browns are very committed to their process in terms of what they are willing to allocate to various spots on the field. And I think, they want Jacob Phillips and Taki, and we're going to talk with Coach Tarver tomorrow on this show. And I think you'll get some good insights into some of the young players the Browns have. But you want those people to take steps and to become your own Lavonte David. But clearly he's a premier player at the position. You know very well when you walk into that lobby at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers headquarters, there's the statues, and Derek Brooks is in it, obviously, with Gruden and the Lombardi. And I imagine they're going to have to put another statue in there. And Lavonte David's one of the guys who will make it in the statue list.
Yeah.
So
he would be on the list.
He's that's how he's thought of there on a team that had a lot of good players. Lavonte David's guaranteed to be on that amongst those featured in said statue. So I don't think they want him to go. And I know Pro Football Focus speculated, that he goes back to the Bucs for a pretty penny. He's the best linebacker out there. There's no question. Do the Browns, to me, if your big splurge is Lavonte David, you're going defensive end in the draft, most likely, and you're trying to, between that rookie, Claiborne, and maybe Curtis Weaver, get Olivier Vernon's production opposite Miles, knowing that now your second level is going to be massively improved, and that Lavonte David will not only be an impact player for you, giving you impact players at all three levels of the defense for the first time, but that he would be also a tremendous mentor to help get the best out of Jacob Phillips and Sione Taki and Mack Wilson going forward.
Absolutely. And I think that there were some signs, there were certainly some games down the stretch with Jacob Phillips where you went, oh, I got it. Now I get it. I see why everyone's so high on the kid, because he had some games where he was more than ready to play the position at a very high level in the NFL. And so I think you understand the enthusiasm around Jacob Phillips. And to me, to splurge on David would just be kind of a different way of thinking when you look at the premium on defensive end opposite Miles. And then you and I both agreed secondary, whether it's safety or corner, to me, it feels like the second biggest priority. And so that would seem to be down the list. And if you allocate that money to David, and it'll take a lot, if you do that, then you won't be able to address those other things in the way that, I think that you can.
Right, and that's just it. Everything, there's only so much to go around. And so you got to be judicious in how you allocate your resources, where you choose to allocate your resources. And I think that is something that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski clearly have given, Paul DePodesta and the whole crew have given a great deal of thought to, and that they will be very much prepared to do that. I think that is, those discussions have been had. I'm sure there are guardrails around where we're going to make our investments, the positions we're going to make our investments. And, putting there may be a special situation where they feel that everything lines up for them to make what I would call a top shelf investment in the linebacking room, off-ball linebacker. I think it would take a very special set of circumstances and a very special player for the Browns to do that. I don't think that would be their typical modus operandi.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with that. In terms of what could happen in the draft, Mel Kiper Jr. with a media call, a conference call yesterday with the media. We'll have some of those highlights in terms of who the Browns could look at pick number 26. Lots of good stuff here. We'll have that for you coming up next. You listen to Cleveland Runs Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If you live and breathe football, you know sometimes keeping your priorities straight can be a challenge. Unfortunately, the same can be true when you gamble. If you find gambling is affecting other parts of your life, get some help, get tips on responsible gambling at KeepItFunOhio.com. He is the dean of drafting. He is Mel Kiper Jr. He is the best at it. He had a media call on Monday. He's my favorite. I don't know if he's the best. I would never hold him accountable if he's not. I just love him so much. And he's the guy that I gravitate towards. He definitely has the best hair. I just love his – and I love how serious he is with it. Like, I love his whole persona. I just love it.
Yes.
It's just, I don't know. It's a warm blanket. He's been around forever. I love him.
Without Mel Kiper, for example, the film Draft Day doesn't get made, right? Like, Mel Kiper put Draft Day on the map. And Draft Day, by the way, a favorite of my good friend Kenneth Classman, so much so that Beatbox bought Kenny a framed movie poster of Draft Day for him a month before his birthday, that early, because he loves it that much. He's the guy who also loves Taki, and that's who is going to get the Taki jersey down the line. But I don't think you could have the draft, the explosion of the draft into an event. I think Mel Kiper Jr. deserves all the credit in the world for that.
If Mel Kiper Jr. wasn't great at his job, I don't know if it would be what it is. Truly. Like, and I don't even mean from, like, breaking down players. I just mean from him, the way that he sells the picks.
His hair?
The way that he has the encyclopedic knowledge, the look, the diction, all of it. Like, it's just perfect. It's perfect, and it's required. And, you know, I loved him and Boomer on it. You know? Like, it was just the comedy of it.
So good.
And without Mayock, and Jeremiah is now obviously does a great job with NFL Network, but Mayock was kind of poking his nose in that, and then they add McShay, and they go at each other. It's just a win. Either way, anyway, we all win because we have Mel Kiper Jr. So he had a conference call with the media on Monday where he answered all sorts of draft questions, and he doesn't do, like, radio hits, right, Gibby? Like, I've never heard anybody have him on, like, a local show.
We had him.
We had him.
We had a deal, but he was promoting something.
Yeah.
But, like, I could literally call him, and he was like, yep, I'll do it today. He would come on. He did like 3 or 4 in 1 year. I don't know what it cost or
were we first round? Was it when he had the number 1 overall, or was it Miles, or was it?
It was older.
Do you remember the draft?
It might have been older than that.
Might have been 14, 15, 16 era would be my guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was something that he was a backer of, and
that had an affiliation with us too.
Yep.
Yeah. Out of Tennessee.
Okay, I see. Because I've never heard him do, like, just local radio hits.
He does once in a while, but not often.
Normally,
does he?
It's his conference call.
Rare.
Yeah, very rare.
Yeah, does the conference call. So that's what he did. So
By
here
the way,
he was on what the Browns could.
By the way, this call was 90 minutes. I don't even know how many questions he took. I listened. Like,
awesome.
I got an hour and 5 minutes in, and I'm like, I have no idea about 3/4 of what he just talked about. But I'm listening for certain things, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
He's just rapid firing off of these.
Well, and the other thing I'll say before we get to the sound is he launched an industry. There is no Dane Brugler without Mel Kiper Jr.
Right.
There is no McShay. There is no Jeremiah. There is no Matt Miller. And if all those guys who do this, those guys don't exist. He is responsible for the industry of mock drafts. He is responsible for the industry of it. Like, that can't be minimized at all. So here is Mel Kiper on what the Browns could do at pick number 26 about the defensive ends and the linebackers. And so let's have a listen to that.
Pretty much every mock draft is predicting the Browns are going to target a defensive player at 26, but it's a fairly even toss-up at which position that will be. Which of those positions do you think they should target most at 26 based on the depth of each of those classes? And do you think a run on defensive ends before that pick, which you and a few others have mocked, would have a big impact on that decision?
Yeah, I think that's where you get into, Gregory Rousseau opting out, Jalen Phillips playing, Kwity Paye playing, but having some up and down performances. So that all those guys have been pushed into the latter portion of round 1. I'm not as high on Gregory Rousseau as some people are. I actually like Phillips better, but Rousseau may go a little bit ahead of him. So, that's going to be intriguing there to see how that goes with Phillips wearing his same number of Rousseau and having a really good year. But there's a durability concern there with him as well. I think linebacker, if it follows Zaven Collins, I think it would be tough to pass him up. He can play inside, outside.
30.
Oklahoma State, where the majority of his sacks came. Other than that, though, he was making tackles all over the field, getting into the backfield. He wasn't the sack artist, but he was a rangy guy. Those kind of linebackers, John Gruden always said, hey, you put them on the inside. Taller linebackers with length are very difficult to deal with for a quarterback.
10 seconds, standby.
I think the fact that he brings a skill set that you don't necessarily always see, and a guy can play inside or outside, that makes Zaven Collins an attractive guy at 26.
And, the more that you read about Zaven Collins and even peruse him, who he reminds me a little bit of, which would be somebody that Kevin Stefanski and even Joe Woods and Jeff Howard would all be very familiar with, is Anthony Barr.
Lawrence Taylor? Lawrence Taylor?
No, not Lawrence Taylor. Anthony Barr. Anthony Barr.
I think you're going to go Lawrence Taylor would be who you thought. I thought that was maybe your apples for Zaven Collins.
No, I don't believe that he'd be in the discussion.
Which would
be 26.
That'd be great
if he were.
You think
Lawrence Taylor?
Would he slip if he was a Lawrence Taylor clone? Would he slip down to us by chance?
I don't believe so. But Barr, that long, athletic, rangy linebacker, UCLA kid, he played at Minnesota for a long time. Was a Pro Bowler, and gives you a lot of options in this kind of a defense to have that speed, and also can do some things rushing the passer. But that would be more of an athlete that you're putting there to be disruptive and use his height to make it difficult throwing over the middle of the field.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting. You think about like what the Cardinals are trying to do with Isaiah Simmons.
Yep.
It's somebody who can kind of do everything, and I think we have ideas of some form of that with Grant Delpit, and the kid out of Notre Dame that we talk about all the time kind of has that type of thing. Collins is more just he gets after it on the pass rush a little bit more. Here's a little bit more on pick number 26. Could the Browns go edge rusher or even wide receiver for Mel Kiper Jr.?
I think in terms of edge, there will be guys there, but they're all have their concerns. So that's why they're getting to that point. I think the speed receiver, is Kadarius Toney going to be around at that point? Do you want to reach for a Tutu Atwell, who will be one of the fastest players in the draft out of Louisville, but he doesn't have great size? That's where you get into Elijah Moore as a slot receiver from Ole Miss, heck of a player, but more of a second rounder. So, if you're Cleveland and you're thinking that, I would trade out of 26. You're always going to get teams looking to trade into that spot in the late first, move out of the first into the early second, and then look at Elijah Moore, a Tutu Atwell, somebody like that in the early second. If you want that speed receiver or a slot guy, you want a guy quick and explosive, that would be the spot to get the receiver, I would think, over another position. In the late first, if you stick with that,
10 seconds, standby.
Would be the best choice. And I do think any of the pass rushers you look at all come with some concern that gives you more of a little bit of a boom-bust question mark there.
The other thing that you love about Mel Kiper Jr., he does his homework. Remember there was the mock draft a couple of weeks ago that had us trading up, and we said, it doesn't seem like that makes any sense at all for us to trade up. And in fact, you and I on the show said, I think if anything at 26 you would trade down and pick up a top of the two and pick up an extra whatever, and that would be the way to do it, and that's what Uncle Mel said as well.
Yeah, I think somebody might have gotten a little, hey, Uncle Mel, we love you. Not happening. Yeah. Let's go ahead and revise that going forward. Yeah.
Not happening, certainly. So that was some good stuff there. Here is more from Mel Kiper Jr. on the edge guys who could be available for the Browns at pick number 26.
All right, that would be Gregory Rousseau from Miami, who opted out and had the big year in 2019. But when you look at 2019, there were some games where you were getting coverage sacks. You're not as quick off the snap. I think you need to anticipate better, be a little explosive off the snap. I think another year would have really helped him. He didn't have it. Jalen Phillips, the durability concern coming in. He did have a great year at Miami, picked up where Rousseau left off. Kwity Paye had an uneven year, but he's going to test great at Michigan. He would be another one who would be one of those edge guys that could be looked at very closely at that particular point. I think you look also at the combo guys. Joe Tryon opted out of Washington. He's that combo defensive end outside linebacker. Joseph Osai, Texas, could put his hand on the ground, play in space on his feet, but he had really two games where he had real good sack production. Jason Oweh at Penn State, intriguing, 4.3 speed at 260 pounds, didn't have a sack. I really like Chris Rumph, the second out of Duke. He could be a guy in the second round you look at. I mentioned Ojulari from Georgia. So those are Quincy Roche, Miami, got another guy, can get some coverage sacks, hustles, maybe.
Stand by, 10 seconds.
Second, Ellerson Smith, Northern Iowa. I have a fourth-round grade on. So those are some of the edge guys that will go in the first few rounds.
couple of guys I like that he mentioned, and just because I've seen them, are Kwity Paye and Jason Oweh out of Penn State, Kwity Paye out of Michigan. Some of this has to do with, on the Jason Oweh front, Penn State, for better or worse, as a program, kind of viewed last year as a wash, and they had a tough time. It was a tough year, and you almost got the feeling over there that they want to act like it didn't happen as a program, like it just COVID year on to next year. That's kind of
let's get back
throw
to
it out. That's kind of the way, and that's kind of what happened with their team over there. But I do like him a lot. I think he'll test incredibly well. Kwity Paye, kind of the same thing happened at Michigan, just kind of a listless season. I don't think it's a coincidence, guys. I don't think it's a coincidence that you don't hear a lot of Big Ten guys rising up draft boards. I think most of the kids who are high-profile players, Rondale Moore, Bateman, these two kids, Justin Fields, certainly, Shaun Wade at Ohio State, Wyatt Davis at Ohio State. I think a lot of those kids pressed like heck. I think they played with tremendous obligation. I think they played under tremendous pressure. I think stress was a factor in it. The testing policy that was happening in the Big Ten was light years different than the testing policies and protocols that were happening in the SEC. The contact tracing that was happening in the Big Ten was light years different than what was happening in the SEC. And some of this stuff is coming to light. This was not an ideal circumstance for Big Ten football players to thrive. It wasn't. And I think you see it across the board. These guys that we're talking about, the Ohio State guys, we'll hear from Mel on Justin Fields in a second. I believe in these guys. I think they were put through a season that was on the brink of hell, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and it would explain why in this next question is about the Buckeyes having only one projected first-rounder now in Fields. When they were prior to the season, you would have had numerous Buckeyes. And if they only have one first-rounder, that'll be the lowest number in,
long time.
A long time. But let's see, you mentioned Wade. That's a guy that a lot of people thought would be a first-rounder, had a rough year. He's probably going to end up being a steal for somebody in the second round. Maybe even – I saw one mock where he went in the third round, which blew my mind. But anyway, here's Mel.
Yeah, and
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, here's Mel, and then I'll give you a take on Wade. Go ahead.
In terms of Wade just didn't have the cover skills this year playing outside that he did when he was in the slot. I think he could end up being an inside safety type or a slot corner where he felt more comfortable rather than being out on an island. So he's going to be an interesting guy. I think he would have been a first-round pick had he played up to the level you expected, or certainly as he did in 2019 when he was playing in the slot. So to me, he's a second or third-round pick now. Wyatt Davis, I think, is in that second, third-round discussion as well. Solid player all the way around. Guards are going to get pushed down automatically unless they're super elite.
Stand by 10 seconds.
When he came out of Notre Dame and went in the top 10. But I think Wyatt Davis, second round at worst third. I think Shaun Wade, probably second at worst third for him.
Yeah, and so it'll probably just be Fields, and Mel's been a staunch defender of Fields and saying, look, the same thing that people are saying about Fields is stuff that I heard about Josh Allen and Justin Herbert last year. Like, I've been hearing this. Like, it's not a concern. You have nothing to worry about with Fields. And I tend to side with him on that. But I think Wade's another great example of what I was just saying. He felt tremendous pressure every time he was out there to prove that he was a first-rounder. You remember now, guys, in the case of the teams that they measure themselves against, I'm speaking of the Buckeyes specifically here, but the Big Ten teams at large, the teams you measure yourself against around the rest of the country already played half of their games by the time you started. So there was this natural feeling of we got to catch up, and there was pressing that was happening, and then as I mentioned, and some of this stuff just now coming to light, the incredible pressure and tension that came with the Big Ten's testing protocols, which were just so different than anybody else and held to such a different higher standard than anybody else. And oftentimes they would go into a Saturday, and I remember the Illinois game. They were going to fly. They practiced Friday. They were going to fly up until 9 o'clock at night, and then they were going to fly the next morning at 10, and then the game was canceled. I mean, how's that for your mental health?
Right. Not easy. Not easy.
Not good.
The big guys in the Big Ten who opted out were Bateman, right, the receiver at Minnesota, and
but then he came back and played. Rondale Moore opted out, and then he came back and played.
Parsons is the only one. Is he the only one that opted out and stayed out?
He's the only one that stayed out, and ironically,
the one
he
who's
seems
a lock
to be
in
staying
the first round.
Yeah,
like
seems
Wade
like
would have. If Wade opted out, he'd be a first round pick.
Yeah, I think so because I think he'll be a steal for somebody in the second or third. I think he was uncomfortable out there, but I think he's a big kid. He's rangy
for a slot corner.
Yeah. I think he could fill that. I do think that. Here's Mel on some of the other Buckeyes who are rising as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah, I think Baron Browning would be the one. Versatile linebacker, great, tremendous overall talent, has really come on to maybe become a third-round pick. So he's definitely moved up. Baron Browning has. So he would, if I had to highlight one guy that has definitely risen from the Ohio State players, Trey Sermon, the running back. I have right now a third, fourth-round grade on him.
10 seconds, stand by.
That is, like I say, moving up the board a little bit based on just the way he played, the way he finished, and I think also anticipating the way he will test, it would be Baron Browning.
Browning's going to test incredible. He's a five-star kid out of Texas. Never could really find a home as a true every-down linebacker, but he's going to test off the charts, and he can put his hand down and rush the passer. He can cover. He's ultra-athletic. The other guy I think will be interesting for them is Pete Werner, who can really fly, kind of as a coverage linebacker. I think that could be an interesting one. But, we just kind of stumbled on that, but I think that's kind of probably a realistic reason for what is happening to the Big Ten players in the draft, because you've seen a lot of them slide who felt like they were sure first-round picks and now being pushed out. And I think for the smart teams that can see it and have all that information, you could get some steals. I think Rondale Moore would be an absolute steal. He's going to be a steal for somebody in the second round.
Yeah.
Because he's a problem.
Talented guy with some speed. It's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a real challenging year, and I think you will see more day two great returns on investment in this draft than perhaps in other drafts.
I would agree. I think you will too. And I can also agree that there's still so much more to come.
Oh, my goodness.
You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Huge news here. I am off the rest of the week, and so the Z will remain, and
right.
Gibbe. And I'm told a cornucopia of guests will be stopping by to join the great Z in the coming days. Cornucopia of guests.
Yeah. Well, I know Coach Tarver tomorrow will look at the linebackers, and I think that you guys are going to really enjoy that one. It was a good one.
Jeff Howard,
That's
I think, will join us. Gribbs is going to join to help you out with the deep dives.
The Ibs boys. Why don't you just do your other show? Just do a BPA version of
Thursday,
CBD
Beau.
with the three of you.
Patience, my friends. Patience. Greatness comes in small
Are you
doses.
suggesting that we're taking over an episode of CBD with the BPA?
30 seconds.
No, we're not.
What? I didn't hear that. What did you say?
The podcast is separate from the show.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Except when
I
go
can
to
tell
the
you that
bullpen
Kevin
for you.
Stefanski press conference is coming up in about a half hour. The next level will have that, and you have that to look forward to, which is nice. We are back tomorrow. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.